Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Please welcome Washington National Opera's vocal coach, Ken Weiss.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. On the 17th of July in 1794, an extraordinary thing happened on the Place de la Nation in Paris, where 10 days before the French Revolution's reign of terror ends, and 16 Carmelite nuns from a convent in Compiègne are marched to the guillotine. As the first of them is taken up to the scaffold, she begins singing Psalm 117, "Praise the Lord, all ye nations," and all her sisters join in, and they continue singing without cease as each of them is led to their deaths. The crowd is stunned into silence, and usually boisterous, they disperse silently at the end. That's a real-life incident, and it is the inspiration and the nucleus of the opera by Francis Poulenc called The Dialogues of the Carmelites, which Washington National Opera will present in the Opera House, just right behind you, starting February 21st, running 6 performances through March 10th, I think. Tonight we'll give you a chance to hear some of the music from the opera with members of the cast and members of the Domingo Kefritz Young Artist Program. Also some other music by Poulenc, and we'll talk a little bit about the background to the story and how the opera came to be written. Now, Poulenc came to opera late in his career. He was 58 when The Dialogues of the Carmelites was premiered at La Scala in Milan. The way he learned to write vocal music was by writing songs he wrote throughout his career. And we're going to start tonight's program with some songs by Poulenc, so you can kind of see where the music of the Dialogues of the Carmelites starts out. The songs you're going to hear come from 2 groups he wrote in 1939 and 1940. One is called Fiançailles pour rire, or Light-Hearted Betrothals, and the other one is called Banalité, which means small talk. In them, you're going to hear the sound that makes Poulenc instantly recognizable. He's writing in the middle of the 20th century, wherein a lot of composers are writing very thorny and very dissonant music. And he insists on singable melodies that a voice can caress. And he has harmonies that owe a lot to Debussy and to Ravel, and also a lot to jazz and cabaret music. I'll tell you briefly about each of the songs we're going to hear. First, there'll be a sort of folk song about what happens at the gates of a town named Orqueniz, where there are some people who want to go in and some people who want to go out, and all of them are driven by affairs of the heart. It's called Chanson d'Orqueniz, the Song of Orqueniz. Then the ultimate lazy afternoon song. It's called Hôtel, or Hotel, and it's about someone who has absolutely nothing to do in the afternoon but lay around their hotel room and smoke. Not advocating, just reporting, okay? Then a waltz straight out of a music hall to give us a sense of the excitement of a trip to Paris. It's called Voyage Apari. And then a scene from a Hungarian restaurant. A strolling violinist fascinates the customers by drawing out, as the text says, long moans from the string of troubles and chords from the gallows ropes. Then a song called Fleur, in which we see the end of a love affair, symbolized by its last gift, a bouquet of flowers in winter. And finally, a song called Il vole. Now, il vole is a double entendre in French. It means both he flees and he steals. And it's a song full of wordplay in which a woman describes her lover and compares him to the crow in Aesop's fable who steals a cheese. Just as the crow does when he steals the cheese, when her lover is done stealing her heart, he flies off. You incidentally, thanks to our friends on the crew here at the Millennium stage, can see super titles above the stage, so you'll know exactly what the singers are saying all the time. So here are mezzo-soprano Alexandra Romano, soprano Jennifer Charest, and pianist Joel Ayal. Selections from Banalité and Fiançailles pour rire. So, those songs are worldly, sensual, even frivolous. But that's only one half of Poulenc's musical personality. A biographer of his said that he was half naughty boy and half pious monk. And in his 30s, he started to write sacred choral music, spurred a little bit because a close friend of his, died in a very, very brutal automobile accident. And when he began to write sacred music, he brought to it really the same world of sound that you just heard. Those rich, jazz-inflected harmonies that you heard in the song Hotel, those also bathe litanies to the Virgin Mary. And that's the same kind of sound world that he keeps to when he comes to write the dialogues of the Carmelites. Now, the event we talked about, the execution of the nuns, comes at the end of Dialogues of the Carmelites. The bulk of the story is about how the women in this Carmelite convent deal with the noose of the revolution slowly closing around them, how their faith is tested. And at the center of the story is a young nun named Sister Blanche. She's a woman from an aristocratic family. She's born Blanche de la Force. And if there's one adjective that characterizes her, you would say it is fearful. Her whole life is marked by fear, and it's a fear that neither her doting father nor her overprotective, sort of controlling brother can understand. But she feels that the world, as she says, is an alien place in which she doesn't really belong. And the only comfort she finds is in church. Her family expects her to marry. They are shocked when she announces her decision to become a nun. And she hopes that the convent will be a refuge for her, the refuge from the world that she longs for. So in the early days of the revolution in 1789, she joins the Carmelite order. Now we'll see in our first selection from Dialogues of the Carmelites that the convent walls can't keep out all the troubles of the world. Soon after entering the order, Blanche is working alongside another young novice named Constance, and there are tensions in the convent. There is not much food in the area. There's no grain. The nuns are subsisting on lentils. And the Mother Superior, the prioress, is dying. Constance stays cheerful, reminiscing as she works about the happy life that she led in Brittany before she entered the convent. But the Mother Superior's imminent death haunts Blanche. She's unable to shake it. It's death that scares her more than anything else. And when Constance suggests that both she and Blanche may die young, it's more than Blanche can bear. We will do this and the rest of the scenes from dialogues in English. It was Poulenc's express wish when he wrote the piece that it be performed in the language of the audience that was watching it. So when it was premiered at La Scala, for example, it wasn't done in French, it was done in Italian. Poulenc's idea was that what these characters say is awfully important. Their turns of phrase. The characters' words need to reach directly across the footlights to the audience. So he approved a translation by Joseph Mackless, and that, with slight modifications, is what we use today. So now to hear the duet between Blanche and Constance from Act 1 of Dialogues of the Carmelites. As Blanche, will hear soprano Raquel Gonzalez, as Constance, soprano Jennifer Charest. At the piano will be Michael Baitzer.
Sister, if you'll excuse me, though I know Yes, you're entirely right.
You and me, I can't believe it. This is absolutely the very strangest thing that I have ever heard. And then me, when it is clear that I deserve to be punished for having spoken so thoughtlessly of the death of our beloved Reverend Mother. Sister Blanche, since I spoke the way I did before and regret it, will you be so kind as to help me to atone for my behavior? Let us kneel and pray. We will offer both of our poor little lives for that of our Reverend Mother.
Tell me, why must I listen to this nonsense?
It came at an odd, dear sister. Really, I think it's such an enchanting inspiration.
You're making fun of me.
No, not at all of a sudden. I did not think that it would do any harm. I've always wanted to die very young.
Tell me, why must I listen to this nonsense?
How strange! The very first time I looked on your face, I just knew that my wish had been granted.
Tell me what you mean. Put down that ridiculous eye and answer me at once, do you hear?
I have always known that God would be kinder than to let me grow old, and that we would die together the same day. Where or how, I assure you, I have never known, and at this moment I still do not know.
What ridiculous assertion! I'm not ashamed of believing that your life could possibly redeem the life of someone else. You're filled with all the pride of the devil. You're someone else!
I did not think what I said would give offense.
How did things arrive at a situation where a group of peaceful, apolitical, cloistered nuns, like the Carmelites of Compiègne, would come to be arrested and executed? The French Revolution is a very complicated saga, as I'm sure you know, and the ins and outs of it have filled many, many miles of library shelves. But I can give you a broad outline of what led to this event. Relations between the revolutionary government and the Catholic Church had been fraught from the very beginning, even though many clergymen supported the first moves of the revolution. For one thing, right in the beginning of the revolution, the government, which was poor in cash, nationalized all church property, seized it, because they needed assets with which to back a currency. And after that, they, in the beginning of an effort to remake French society, they passed a law called the Civil Constitution of the Clergy. And what that meant was that all clergymen, all Catholic priests had to swear an oath of allegiance to the government in Paris above any obligation to the Pope in Rome. They became, in essence, government employees with a government stipend. Beyond that, the leaders of the revolution weren't content just to overturn the political order. They were trying to remake French society from the top to the bottom. So, for example, they remake the calendar. Now they're, instead of 7-day weeks with a Sunday, which every good Catholic in France had always observed, they had 10-day weeks. And if Sunday happened to come on the 10th day of rest, well and good, but it really upset the apple cart. They went farther. As the revolution went forward, they became convinced that the Catholic Church was standing in the way of the revolution's goals, and so there was a process they called de-Christianization. Churches were remade as what they called temples of reasons. Monasteries were disbanded. And things got worse in the latter years of the revolution, when the government becomes obsessed with the idea that there are traitors in their midst who are plotting to bring down the revolution. There are revolts in the north and west of France, and particularly a flashpoint in those revolts was the civil constitution of the clergy. Many priests in those areas had refused to sign an oath of loyalty to the state, and many good Catholics in those areas were outraged by the moves of the government, and that was a major driving force for the revolt. And when the government cracked down on the revolt, they cracked down hard, and a big target of the crackdown were priests and nuns. I'll give you one example. In 2 days in November 1793, 160 priests were loaded onto special barges and drowned in the River Loire. That is the climate that leads to the execution of the nuns at Compiègne. We're going to hear in the next scene from the opera how the forces of the revolution and of the unrest outside the convent walls are starting to press in. The old prioress, the Mother Superior, has died. A new prioress, a woman named Madame Lidoine, comes in to lead the convent. And she arrives at a time when the nuns are feeling under terrible pressure. In this scene, she addresses them for the first time. She's a plain-spoken woman, and her message is simple. The Carmelites' duty is to help redeem the world through prayer. Whatever the world may think or do, whatever may befall the sisters, they need to set themselves to that task and stick to it. And for the first time, she hints that martyrdom may be their fate. For this aria, we are very lucky to have with us Leah Corchetto, who is Lidoine, the second prioress, in our main stage production in the Opera House starting January 21st. Would you please welcome her to sing Lidoine's aria from Act 2 of the Dialogues of the Carmelites.
My dearest daughters, I must tell you in truth that you have suffered great misfortune by losing your beloved mother just when her advice would be of such importance for all of us. We have doubtless left behind us all those calm and peaceful days when we forget too easily we've no assurance of a smooth and easy life, and that we are in the mighty hand of God. What the future holds in store, or what fate awaits us, I cannot say. I ask only this from the boundless gifts of heaven, modest virtue which I find the rich and mighty of this earth look down upon and hold in scorn. Goodwill to all that lives, endless patience, unselfish humility. Of all the virtues, what others fit a group of truly meek and humble women? Oh, surely there are many kinds of courage, and the courage of kings and princes is not at all that of simple people. suit us in the rabbit stew. May I repeat that we are born under women who have come to pray to God. Let us beware of all the things that lure our roving hearts away from prayer. Never trust even the joy of martyrdom. Prayer is a duty. Martyrdom is a reward. When a mighty king before his noble court beckons to a servant that she come and sit beside him on his golden throne, as if she were a well-beloved wife, is it not much wiser that at first she should refuse to believe her eyes and ears, and should continue as if nothing happened? I humbly beg your pardon for speaking in my accustomed manner, without the use of fancy language. Mother Marie, may I request that you now find a proper ending for this little talk.
Of course, aristocrats were a great target of the French Revolution, aristocrats like Blanche de la Force's family. In the second act, her brother comes to the convent. He is leaving the country, he's fleeing to England, and he is trying to convince her to leave with him. He's always treated her as a child, and he is shocked to see how much she has grown up and how far she has drifted away from him. She is resolved to stay a nun, and nothing, he says, can budge her. In the scene we're about to see, she even begins to face the prospect of her own death. She says, "I now am a daughter of God who will suffer for you, and I beg you most sincerely to regard me as a companion in battle." Once again, as Blanche de la Force, we'll hear Raquel Gonzalez, soprano. As her brother, the Chevalier de la Force, we'll hear tenor Patrick O'Halloran. Once again, at the piano is Michael Baitzer.
But why do you not answer me? You have never once raised your eyes to me, and you have hardly listened. Can this be the welcome you owe to your brother?
God is my witness, I've no desire to cause you the slightest sorrow.
Let me come to the point. Our father feels it isn't safe for you to stay here any longer.
Possibly there may be danger, but I feel safe, and that's enough for me.
How can you explain the sudden change in the Blanche that I knew? There is something in your voice and your manner. You're so explained and extremely at ease.
If I now appear uneasy, it is only that I feel a bit embarrassed. I have not as yet
of nature.
Oh, come, you surely do not believe. The life of a Carmelite conforms that all to nature.
In a time such as this, there are women galore who were formerly envied by all, who now believe me would change places with you gladly. If I'm speaking rather harshly, blush. I must, because I see before me the image of a father all alone among his servants.
Do you really think that I am kept here by fear?
Or by your fear of fear? This fear is hardly nobler than any other fear. You have to run the risk of fear as you run the risk of death. And it is this that calls for courage.
Understand, I can only be a helpless and innocent victim of the will of our Lord.
Blush. Just now when I entered this room, you looked as if you surely would collapse from exhaustion. I thought I saw beneath the feeble glimmer of this lamp, as if it were a vision all of our childhood. It is just because we felt so awkward that we arrived at such strange and bitter words that seemed to give offense. Could they have changed my bunny rabbit?
Oh, why must you forever fill me with doubt, as with a poison that destroys? And from this poison I almost died. It's true, the past is gone forever.
You no longer are afraid.
Where I am, nothing can harm me.
Very well. Goodbye, my darling.
Oh, do not leave me so in bitter anger and defiance. Alas, you so accustomed to protect me and pity me, that you cannot see a way to grant me instead that respect and understanding which you would grant to the humblest and everett.
Gosh, now it's you who are angry. Are you really so resentful?
I feel nothing but respect for you and tender affection, but I am no longer that little bunny rabbit. I now am a daughter of God, who will suffer for you, and whom I ask you most sincerely to accept once and for all as a companion in battle.
The Dialogues of the Carmelites opens February 21st in the Opera House. It runs 6 performances through March 10th. Now, before we leave you tonight, we're going to offer you something completely different from the next opera down the line. It's starting on March 7th. The Washington National Opera will present Wagner's The Flying Dutchman. It couldn't be a more different story. The story, in a nutshell, is that a sea captain caught in a terrible storm off the Cape of Good Hope makes a very unfortunate vow. He vows that he will sail around the Cape if it takes him forever. And you don't make those kinds of vows because you never know who's listening. The devil is listening and hears him, and now he's cursed. Now he's cursed and condemned to sail the seas with his ship and crew forever. And his only hope of getting out of it is that every 7 years he can land for a brief period, and if in one of those visits he can find a woman who will love him truly even to the point of death, then he can be released from the curse. This is a story of redemption through love. It's also one of the great pieces ever written about the sea. All through the score you can hear the ocean surging and rolling. And you'll hear a little bit both of the theme of love and the theme of the sea in the number we're going to give you. This is from the very beginning of the show. A young steersman is on a ship nearing home after a long sea voyage, and to keep himself awake during his watch, he sings to himself about the girl he left in port. It's called the Steuermannslied, the song of the steersman. And we'll hear it from tenor Michael Brandenburg. Once again, if you want to know what he's saying, there'll be titles above the stage and to the sides. Here's Michael Brandenburg to sing the Steuermannslied from Richard Wagner's The Flying Dutchman.
Mit Gewitter und Sturm aus fernem Meer, mein Mädel, bin dir nah. Über turmhohe Flut von Süden her, mein Mädel, ich bin da. Mein Mädel, wenn nicht Südwind wär, ich nimmer Wolken zu dir. Ach, liebe Südwind, das noch mehr, mein Mädel verlangt nach mir. Oh, oh, yeah, oh, 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 yeah. Gestalt aus weitem Land, ich hab an dich gedacht. Durch Gewitter und Meer